Today we're going to tie the Camo squid, or at least my version of it. I've had a lot of difficulty with this pattern, trying to get it to a spot where I like it. I'm getting a lot more consistent with this pattern, but it's really easy to overuse materials, and talk about it a bit more in the video here with some of the challenges you get with using too much materials, and if you're really particular about how certain flies look in the water, or you kind of geek out over stuff like that. There's just some things that can get in the way of creating that sort of perfect fly that you want. So I'm going to tie this fly today in a different color scheme. I'm going to do sort of a pink and orange, and we'll get started. So we've got a cut shank here. It was originally a little streamer hook. Just cut it off. I'll probably only end up tying on about 20-25 mils worth of the shank, so I've got a good amount of it that's still kind of hidden in the vise here. I'll just cut that off after the fact. And then I've got a large cone on here. This is just an orange cone. It'll kind of go along with the theme of the fly. And then sometimes I'll do ultra rigs with the braid and the tubing, but I ran out of the tubing recently, and so I'm just using some trailer wire that I recently bought. I think this is some Skeena River fly supply. The color doesn't really go with the fly pattern or the fly theme here, but that'll be kind of hidden away anyway. So okay, so I'm going to create a loop here, and then we'll start with the first part of the fly. Start with a little bit of orange Ice Dub UV Hot. This is one of those patterns I had to kind of keep telling myself not to use as much material as I think. So as I'm building each of these stations, I'm going to try and be mindful of how much material I'm using, because it can add up really quickly, and then you end up getting a fly that swims a bit weird. And then we're also going to do some gold angel hair. Pull out a good amount of that, and I'm just going to kind of cut it into maybe thirds. I only want it to be a bit longer than some of the longest fibers of the orange Ice Dub. There we go, just like that. Just a little hot spot on the inside, similar to this one here with the blue. It's pretty short. This one I used I actually have a brush on a wire, but we'll just build something for this fly here. That first bump that we just put together, I'm gonna place that in the loop. I'm just gonna place it 50-50 in there. You can kind of see that. So that has some good length. So place that in there like that. I like how that's spaced out already. I'm just gonna spin it. And then I like to go through first and just sort of pick it out with the bodkin, so I'm just gonna do that. And then I like to grab a toothbrush or any sort of dubbing brush and just kind of really pick out any loose fibers. So it's good just like that. And take a bit of water and just bring it back. And then I'll start wrapping here. Get that good shape there. It's not really a prop, because the prop is going to be the second station, the main shoulder of the fly, but this kind of just adds a little bit of a hot spot and a spot for us to tie in some of this, some of these next steps. So for the ostrich on the first station, after the first station, I like to add a bit of barring. I'm going to cut off 6 for each side. Place them down on the card here like that. Just adds a bit of texture to the fly, and you'll see when it's actually tied in, it looks pretty cool. I'm going to take the 6 strands that I barred. Again, this is more of a preference thing in terms of how short or long you want to have it. Generally, the pattern calls for it to be on the longer side, so if I lay that in there, you can kind of see I'm going to have it reach a bit further back. I like the fly to have it a bit longer. So catch that in a few times there on that side, and then I'm just going to grab the other ostrich. I'm not too worried about keeping the body all even, just because it's all going to be covered with material, as you can see, you know, when you go. I've seen it in a couple different patterns where people just do ostrich. I've seen it where they do some ostrich and some rubber legs. I kind of like the look of that, and I just recently bought some new orangey rubber legs, so I'm gonna add some of that as well too. And I like to kind of stagger them so that one is longer than the other. That way when I tie it in, I generally don't have to trim it at all. I can just kind of lay it down on the side like that. I'm doing my side first, and then I'll catch that in there like that. Next, I'm going to add some flash. I'm just using crinkle mirror flash from Cascade Crest. I'm just going to grab a couple strands. So I picked off 2 jungle cock feathers here, and I'm just gonna grab just underneath the main part of the feather. I'm gonna strip everything else back. Just like that. And then the last step for this station here is adding in the jungle cock eyes. So generally they should reach a bit far back. They kind of have a kind of an eye effect there, so I'm going to tie those in like that. I've already stripped the middle here so that it's not super bulky in terms of having all that extra under feather, and I'm just going to tie that in like this. Just like that, and then I'm going to trim some of this away. And then we'll go on to the next station. Now we're gonna start to transition from sort of darker to lighter to the lightest, ideally. So I'm gonna start with some pink, UV pink here. Just gonna place a little bit of that down. I'm gonna grab some predator wrap here. So I'm gonna cut off some strands here. And I don't want to, again, I don't want to use too much of this, like half of this cut off, just like that. I'm gonna lay that in like that, and I'm gonna just blend these two together. I don't want to have too much of that, because you get this sort of this weird effect where, and I already noticed it a bit with this fly, where I have too much built into this second shoulder, and it creates such a firm prop for all these softer materials at the very end. As the fly is swimming, it's flowing like this, and all these little ostrich tips here are actually like curling back in to the fly. You can actually see it goes like this, and then all the material just kind of wraps and almost wants to get sucked back in underneath the fly, because you get this vortex effect of where all the water is flowing around and in underneath the fly. So as soon as you tie one or two and you see that, it's like the most annoying thing ever. So I try and limit how much material I build into that second shoulder, because it doesn't take much before you just get too firm of a shoulder, and then everything wants to kind of wrap in and just kind of get sucked in behind the fly. Like everything would essentially kind of just push in like that under behind it, and then the fly would look like a ball. It's just not ideal. So try and just control your material use in this portion of the flag. I think this section here is what matters the most, and I haven't tied one yet that had too little. So that's just a reminder when you're building this second station here. With just the dubbing and the predator wrap alone, it's not firm enough of a shoulder. So I'm controlling my amount of material that I'm using, but I am going to grab some marble fox here. I'm just going to grab like a very, very small amount here. So I'm going to, actually, as soon as I think I like a certain amount, I just take a little bit less. And I'm going to cut that off here. It's going to give me a bit more substance to this portion here, and it's kind of sticking with the theme of this fly. And then I'm just going to take this little bit of dubbing that I had put off to the side there, and I'm just going to lay it down the middle like that. In the original pattern, they did use an Amherst. I don't have any lighter or natural Amherst here, so I'm actually going to take a couple fibers of this voodoo fibers from H&H. It's cool, kind of similar to Flashabou, but it's just kind of a matte finish, and ideally I want them to be about as long as that fur. So ideally you just want them to be in there, kind of mixed in with the loop, and the whole 60-40 thing is kind of up to you in terms of how you want to see those materials in the loop and how long you want it to stand off of there. The fur inside first. So lay this into the loop, just like that. I'm just going to take these scissors and trim away some of the butt ends of this loop. Otherwise it'll end up being really bulky. So I'm going to take some of that away so it's trimmed just a little bit. There's still a little bit of a back to the loop, but not too much. Trim that off. Then I'm going to take the toothbrush again and kind of start grabbing everything. I'll try not to hit the jungle cock there just because it's a bit more brittle. But I'll try and grab almost everything else and sort of. Okay, there we go. So we got those tied in. It's got some cool barring in the body, but you can still see it's pretty translucent. So, and then we're gonna pick 4 saddle hackles here. The pattern calls for 2 that are sort of longer on the top and then 2 that are a bit shorter on the bottom. I'm just gonna make this lengthwise about maybe as far back as the eyes go. And then I'm gonna tie that in underneath. And then the second one's up top here. I'm gonna have them reach a bit further back now. You can see those are reaching about as far back as the flash and the ostrich. So I'm gonna lay that in now like this. There, so now we just have the last station to do here. Again, we're going to create another dubbing loop, and then we're going to tie in that last minnow belly or something. It's really light, really translucent. And I'm gonna end up using some of this pink here again. I'm just gonna take a little bit, just like the last station there. I'm gonna use it as Velcro for this loop. So I'm just gonna put a little bit of that down. And then I'm gonna take some of the pink ostrich here, and I'm gonna take some from the top here. These are just some shorter ones. I'm gonna lay these down. Lay this down just like that. And when I actually put this in the loop, I'll probably end up trimming off some of these ends if I'm imagining the threads going right here. I like that length there, so I'm just gonna leave that like that. I'm gonna put this down. Like that. We're gonna grab that front station now. That's just the ostrich and some of the dubbing like that. I'm gonna lay that in. Now I can tell based off of how this fly is ending up, there's still a good amount of space here. So what I may end up doing is creating a bit of a front station here, and again, and just adding a bit of dubbing in. So we'll see once I actually spin this in. I'm going to take a bit of these butt ends off as well too. I'm not loving how this one is going to end up. I should have really built a bit more dubbing into that front loop. Ideally, you have enough there that once you do that final wrap, it's butted right up against your cone or your bead, and you can just whip finish and be done. But I like the proportions here. With each of the stations, I can tell it's not going to be a super bulky and super prominent shoulder. So I'm just gonna create a second loop here. Normally you wouldn't have to do this, or I wouldn't normally do this. I'd try and control the amount of material a bit better, but that's fine. I'm just gonna take some of the UV pink just to kind of keep the pink theme going at the front here. So I'm just going to grab a whip finisher. And there you go. So comb this out one more time. Something like that. There you go. That one was a bit on the longer side compared to, you know, this black and blue one. You can see the difference in how pronounced this shoulder is on this blue one. Once I bring it back versus this one, I find this one is a lot better in terms of just the overall profile and size, and I can tell the material is going to want to swim a lot easier. So there you go. There's my version of the camo squid, and thanks for watching.